Hi everybody, thank you for your kind responses to the previous video regarding archival releases and reissues that weren't just the songs or whatever, but actually had some bonus stuff with them. I had a lot of fun making that one. It wasn't too hard to whittle that one down, and believe it or not, neither is this one. I'm gonna do. I always used to do 5, or I do number 1 and then 5 runners up. Well, just sort of lucky number 7 this year. I'm going to do my top 7 releases of 2021. So for this, again, it's not archival releases. It's not reissues that celebrated their anniversary this year or whatever. These are my favorite 7 albums of new material. Some newer artists, some established, some in the middle. This won't surprise you. It's mostly Americana music, and that's because, you know, I'm not Gene Simmons about it. I'm not a grouch. I don't think rock and roll is dead. I think rock and roll is pretty. It's thriving in a lot of circles. But to me, my interests, you know, they've really shifted over the last few years, and so unless there's a newer band that has a lot of originality and doesn't sound like everything else, I really don't pick up the albums, and if I do, they don't make the top 10 or top 5 or whatever, you know. My wife says she watches all of these videos, so here's a little test. The Foo Fighters, as Christopher Walken called them, I believe they put a new album out this year. They got into the Hall of Fame. They're just kind of meat and potatoes rock and roll to me. There's nothing wrong with them. It's arena rock. It's fun, but that's the kind of thing where you go, okay, it's fun live. It's fun to hear on the radio, I guess, but it doesn't do anything for me the way that a lot of the established artists did who were original, etc. But there is one big one in here that we'll talk about. And I thought, well, how do we do this? And I think the simplest way is just to go in alphabetical order. I thought about doing chronological based on release date, but I thought, that's just lazy. I didn't feel like doing a whole lot of homework regarding release dates for this. Most of these, well, I guess about half come from the second half of this year. I don't know. So let's get started before I prattle on anymore. This one is kind of bound to be on, I think, most Americana listeners' end of the year top albums. It's kind of inevitable, just given that she's had such a great ascent in the last few years after working for a decade and a half or more in not, so I guess sort of relative obscurity. A few years back, 2018, she had a top 5 album and has just been on the radar the last few years. And I'm talking about Brandy Carlisle, and this is her new album, In These Silent Days. I almost accidentally called it Broken Horses just because I heard that on Sirius XM Outlaw Radio this morning. You know, her last album, By the Way I Forgive You, was the first album of hers I'd actually picked up. The title track, or you know, anytime I hear that song, is just one of those instant classics. And she did the Highwomen record. She's been touring like crazy. She's been involved in a lot of projects. She's got, you know, one of the best voices out there today. And so she puts out this album this year, In These Silent Days. One thing I find about her, and this has nothing to do with the music, she is such a magnetic performer and always has a great time, but yet you see the pictures and you go, she doesn't smile much, you know? And you wonder why, because she has every reason to celebrate. She puts out amazing albums. So this one, Right on Time, You and Me on the Rock, I love that song. This Time Tomorrow, Broken Horses, Letter to the Past, sort of self-explanatory. Mama Werewolf, When You're Wrong, Stay Gentle, Sinners, Saints, and Fools, and Throwing Good After Bad. She touches on love and sorrow and loss and family and redemption, and everything her songs and her albums are known for is here. I I didn't think it could get better than her last full studio record, and I have to say, I think this is a more cohesive, more solid album. She just keeps getting better, and so uh, number 1 out of 7, simply because alphabetically by name, Brandy Carlisle, In These Silent Days. Very excited to have this one in the collection this year. Here's the big rock and roll record I was talking about. You can hear my beagle up there yelling. Here's another artist, though, who's been going for decades and decades, has absolutely nothing to prove, but this album is just so solid. It has a couple of covers, a couple of songs that had been released on an EP previously, and one that was originally recorded back, I think, in 2003, and it's been redone. I'm talking about Alice Cooper and this double album called Detroit Stories. It's double. It's actually, there are only 3 or 4 songs per side, and it's at 45 RPM. So if you go out and buy the vinyl record, which you should, keep that in mind. It's at 45 RPM. So it opens with a cover of the Velvet Underground, Rock and Roll, Go Man Go. Really interesting song here called Our Love Will Change the World, which doesn't seem to fit the rest of the album, but Alice somehow makes it. Social Debris, love that one. $1,000 High Heel Shoes, love it. Hail Mary. Detroit City 2021 was originally Detroit City on the Eyes of Alice Cooper record. Drunken in Love, Independence Day, I Hate You, which is a really funny, mostly spoken word song. He has the original Alice Cooper band on here. He has it on several tracks on here. So it's really neat. Sister Ann, Hanging by a Thread, parentheses, Don't Give Up, which is really kind of the, he had put that out before Don't Give Up as a single. This was recorded during the pandemic of 2020 when it was really, really bad. And so it's a very positive number. Shut Up and Rock, he talks about keeping politics out of rock and roll, which goes contrary to some of these Americana records I've got. But just playing rock and roll music, and East Side Story, and it ends with giving out the number for the suicide prevention hotline, because last year and early this year, mental illness, thankfully, or maybe a better way to put it is mental wellness became a much bigger issue and got more into the spotlight, as it should have been for years and years. And so Alice, really with this album, is trying to do his part to keep things upbeat and happy. You may notice a new poster. Ozzy was there for years and years. I just picked this up today. You can see it's from the No More Mr. Nice Guy tour of 2012. I had the chance to see him on that tour. It was phenomenal. Steve Hunter was on there. I was playing guitar with him. Anyway, just a pleasant surprise. He hadn't put a new studio record out in quite a few years. Almost a decade, I think. And so, Alice Cooper, Detroit Stories, one of my lucky number 7 for this year. Absolutely adore that record. This one, 3rd full-length LP. The first one was actually a double. The second one was a single LP, and this one is too. I'll get right to it, and I've spoken her praises so many times before. Elise Davis. She's an Americana singer out of East Nashville, Tennessee. She's been going for a number of years as far as being a performer and songwriter. She had some digital EPs out earlier last decade, but she never really got the recognition she deserved. I'll be honest, I still don't think she does, although there are a number of Americana radio stations and whatnot out there playing her. I love that. Funny story, I guess. This is one of those, I follow a lot of indie artists on Twitter. I don't use Twitter for politics. I use it for music. And it came up as a suggestion. I followed her. She sent one of those generic messages saying, "Hey, would you like a few free songs?" Well, sure, I'll always take free music to sample it. She sent four, and by the time before I was done listening to the fourth one in full, I had her album, The Token, on order. It struck me in a way that I hadn't from a newer artist in a long time. She has a great voice. She has a great sense of humor. Um, I had the chance to see her in concert a couple of years ago, even though I was so mad. The venue she was at um, under promoted it. The room was, it was a smattering of people in there, but yet she still sang her heart out. Was so kind after the show to meet my friend and I, and so I was really looking forward to this new album coming out. I'm still looking forward to it because it's a great record. Anxious, Happy, Chill. She takes the singer songwriter Americana genre and she adds a few more electric instruments than normal. Well, I guess more than she had before. Um, she she got, I'm not talking out of school because it's all over her Instagram, which you should follow. She got married, became a stepmother, has a family. And so this reflects part of that. It reflects a newfound happiness and joy that she hadn't known before. And so there are still some sad songs. She writes great sad songs, but she writes great happy ones too. Ladybug, Yellow Bed, The Grid, which I love. What about just dropping everything, dropping technology, even for a little while and hanging out? Something we all need to do more of. Honeymoon, Flame Color, 30, Summertime, Waves, Empty Rooms, and Another Year. Um, I love this record. I pre-ordered it from her website, and I got the CD as well. It came a little early, which I loved. It's one thing we can do if possible, is order direct from artist's website if you can't get it at your local record store. The money goes right to them, and all these indie artists could really use our help. So, number 3 out of lucky number 7, Anxious, Happy, Chill by Elise Davis. Number 4, this one came out earlier in the year. I picked this up not from his website, but from my favorite local record store, Off the Record. This is a sequel of sorts. In 2015, an album came out called Angels Watching Over Me by a guy that you might not expect it from. I kept the rapping on, I always do. Danny Kroh. This is called Detroit Blues. This is a sequel of Danny playing old Americana, blues, hillbilly, whatever songs, it's a topic for a whole nother video, but 100 years ago, it didn't matter whether you were black or white. These guys were all playing the same instruments, playing the same kind of songs. And, for marketing purposes, the record companies got involved and messed everything up, and they labeled one part hillbilly and one part race records. But in reality, it was just American music. And so what Danny Kroh does here is he takes old songs, 20s, 30s, 40s, and puts his stamp on it, puts his interpretation on it. I say you might not expect this. Danny Kroh first sort of came to prominence in the 80s with the Detroit garage rock band, the Gories. And I mean, if you know anything about Detroit music scene, if you're from Michigan and you're into that kind of music, the Gories are like living legends. They've been around for so long. They were so influential to everybody that came after them. He's also been with the Demolition Doll Rods, another sort of garage rock group. And so to hear him play the guitar, the diddley bow, the mouth bow, the banjo, the jug, the string bass, the tambourine, and the washboard, he does it all on here. There's something so authentic about the way he presents this, because he's not trying to be, some white boy doing black music. He's an American musician doing American music. His voice fits these songs perfectly. It's if you know who I'm talking about, and if you don't, look them up. Kerner, Ray, and Glover. They were part of the folk revival scene in Minneapolis in the early '60s. They have an album called Blues, Rags, and Hollers. Danny's two records of those sort of songs fit right in the next, well, maybe a few generations later. Those predate even his birth. He's, I think, 55-ish, so still a relatively young man, still performing in Detroit with all these great bands and on his own. So I was so excited when I heard this was coming out. I played it, the opening track, Poor Howard, all the way through his take on Sister Rosetta Tharp's Up Above My Head, Oh Death, Reuben Oh Reuben, Rich Girl, Poor Girl. It just runs the gamut of American music, and absolutely stellar album. Raw, vulnerable, honest, to the point. So Danny Kroh, Detroit Blues. Next album, this is, again, if you're a fan of singer-songwriter music, Americana music, great music in general. This guy has been going since the late 80s and has never put out a bad album, and there are very few people who can say that. He's one of the most well-spoken and perhaps outspoken individuals. He's incredibly literate. His songs are stories unto themselves, a lot of them based in reality. So this is absolutely one of my favorite albums that I've heard from this guy, and it can only be, I say that a lot, The Horses and the Hounds by James McMurtry. It's been 6 or 7 years since his last album, Complicated Game, came out. He's toured. He got through the pandemic in part by playing live streams, and I believe he's still doing them. He started to play some shows again. The opening track on here, Canola Fields, might just be the song of the year for me. I'm not sure. If It Don't Bleed, Operation Nevermind, Jackie, Descent Man, Vaquero, The Horses and the Hounds, Fort Walton Wake Up Call, What's the Matter in Blackberry Winter. This was recorded in 2019, pre-pandemic, was going to be released, didn't come out. So, the music itself is a year or two old, but the album did not come out until 2021. So to me, that's why it counts for this year. He has a very plain-spoken voice, but it's an effective instrument, brutally effective for the songs. He does talk some politics, not as much on this album as others. And again, like all these other albums, it runs the gamut of, love and loss and mistakes made and redemption and real life. And it's just, man, I can't say enough good about any of these albums, but James McMurtry, The Horses and the Hounds, man, what a stellar record this is from a guy who's been putting albums out for over 30 years to still be putting material out every bit as good, if not more necessary than when he began. There's a lot to be said for that. So, number 5 out of lucky number 7, The Horses and the Hounds by James McMurtry. Newer artist here. This one, I had never even heard of this guy until Shooter Jennings was playing one of his songs on his Electric Rodeo program in the midsummer. I don't remember, it was about June-ish. And this album came out in July, I believe, maybe August. He played the song off this album called Shenandoah Shakedown. And this is as rootsy and Americana as you get. The guy, almost similar to McMurtry, has a plain, effective voice, tells fantastic stories, is as authentic as you can get. And this is the album called Depreciated by John R. Miller. And I believe he's out of West Virginia. I believe. Uh, excuse me. So, looking over my shoulder, Borrowed Time, St. Faustina, Shenandoah Shakedown, Coming Down, Old Dance Floor, The Motor's Fried, Back and Forth, What's Left of the Valley, Half Ton Van, and Fire Dancer. These stories are all culled straight from her life. I don't know if they're autobiographical. I don't know a whole lot about this guy. I haven't, believe it or not, I haven't obsessively looked into him as I have with many of the artists. This just came as out of nowhere to me. And if I hadn't been listening at exactly the right time, I would have never heard this song or this album. And isn't it funny how that goes sometimes? You just got to be in the right place at the right time, and fate works its magic. And so this, Depreciated by John R. Miller, straight up singer-songwriter Americana, some acoustic instrumentation, some electric, a great balance, but the guy is as authentic as you can get. So do yourself a favor. I think one of the folks that I met on the Delayed Record Store Day actually bought this. I recommended it to some people, and everybody I've spread the gospel of John R. Miller to has enjoyed it. Last one. Number 7. Lucky number 7 out of the top 7. I have posted about this several times. I have spoken this lady's praises several times. One of the most talented singer-songwriters going today. This is her, you can't say major label debut, because but it is compared to her previous 2 albums, which were self-released. She is the first signee to John Prine's Oh Boy Records since John's passing. I've spoken, like I say, a number of times about this, so you can go back and see previous posts. I'm not going to prattle on too much. American Siren by Emily Scott Robinson. That picture probably captures more how she really is. The front one looks pretty serious, but had the chance to see her. Several friends and I went down and caught her concert in Grand Haven at the Waterfront Stadium here in August, and it was a hot evening. Even on the waterfront there was no breeze. It was unrepentant. It was like 86 degrees out, where the sweat's just rolling down the back of your knees, and you think, why am I staying here for this? Well, I tell you why. Because the music was completely entrancing and haunting, and I'd heard her previous 2 albums. I really loved the album Traveling Mercies. She sang about half of these songs, maybe a little bit more. Old Gods, Things You Learn the Hard Way, If Trouble Comes A-Lookin', Let 'Em Burn, Cheap Seats, Hometown Hero, Lost Woman's Prayer, Every Day in Faith, Lightning in a Bottle, and Old North State. Again, I've spoken about her so many times. I've exchanged words on other social media posts with friends. Emily Scott Robinson, American Siren, number 7 out of 7, only because alphabetically. So go do yourself a favor. Pick up this album. Pick up all these albums. Pick up American Siren by Emily Scott Robinson. Pick up Depreciated by John R. Miller. Pick up The Horses and the Hounds by James McMurtry. Pick up Detroit Blues by Danny Kroh. Pick up Anxious Happy Chill by Elise Davis. Pick up Detroit Stories by the godfather of shock, Alice Cooper. You will be, his voice, I didn't even mention his voice earlier. He sounds better than ever. And then pick up In These Silent Days by Brandy Carlisle. So I raise my glass of World Market Sumatra Blend to you. Cheers. I hope you all check out these albums if you're not familiar. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. I look forward to you posting your top albums of the year. I would love to discuss that. As you know, I love discussing music with my with the people who follow this channel and the folks who stumble upon it. So I hope everybody has. Right now it's Saturday. I don't know when I'll get this posted, but if I don't get another one posted before Christmas, and I'm not sure if I'll be able to or not. I hope everybody out there, if you celebrate Christmas, I hope it's the best one you've ever had yet. Peace and love to everybody, as Ringo Starr would say. Peace and love, And take care of yourselves.